People combine all of the psychological disabilities into the umbrella term of psychopath, especially the term of sociopath. The mere term of psychopath holds a negative connotation, usually referring to something considered evil, while most sociopathic people are not bad. What do you think of? What do you think when someone says psychopath? Normally, people tend to think of serial killers, the knife through the shower curtains. These thoughts are not altogether true. Now, psychopath has become a generic term for someone who has a mental psychosis disorder, the most prominent mix-up being between a psychopath and a sociopath. With this in mind, the two terms need to be properly defined. Psychopaths and sociopaths are two completely different terms, only holding some similarities. These terms need to be defined, and the differences should be brought to life in order to wipe out all confusion. A close study on the clinical definitions will show that the main differences lie in the capacity to hold close ties with people, to be able to feel guilt for what they have done, and to show emotion and empathy. The two terms are often confused for the other. They are often thought of as the same, but they are two entirely different people. A Harvard Medical School professor used the two terms of psychopath and sociopath interchangeably in her book, The Sociopath Next Door. Although Erstat, a journalist who wrote about the book, describes a sociopath as being a psychopath, showing his own lack of research on the topic. People seem to not care about the research on these two different psychoses. If people wish to discuss psychopaths, then they should do the research beforehand so they do not incorrectly name a psychopath or vice versa. Psychopaths, as determined from the first half of the term being psycho, are considered as having a mental disorder, while sociopaths have more of a social disorder. Psychopaths tend to be able to act witty and charming, be good at flattery and manipulating other people's emotions, break the law repeatedly, disregard the safety of self and others, have problems with substance abuse, lie, steal, and fight often, not show guilt or remorse, often be angry or arrogant, and seem as though they hold little to no emotion. On the other hand, sociopaths have emotion, though they will try to hide it, and they can emotionally attach to others and feel badly when they hurt those individuals that they are attached to. The sociopath will still lack empathy and attachment toward the greater society, and will not feel guilt in harming a stranger or rebelling against laws, but does not lack empathy entirely, as is typical with the psychopath.
And I said dangerous, and here you are.
I bet you get bored, don't you? I know you do.
He's not paid or anything.
I don't need an incentive, Sebastian. Because you're an idiot. No, don't like that.
So I'm basically filling in for your skull.
Relax, you're doing fine. I'm not a psychopath, that isn't my functioning sociopath. Do your research.
Psychologists studied how both psychoses learn. Sociopaths tend to see people's opposing opinions as wrong and will be stubborn to change their own opinion until it is proven to them multiple times. They learn very fast and will keep any knowledge they deem as important and discard what they think is unimportant. Psychopaths tend to not care about what is important or unimportant and will often remember what took immediate interest rather than what they were told to remember. A sociopath was interviewed to ask about their opinion on this topic. She wanted to remain anonymous, but had this to say. People need to understand the differences. I don't appreciate being considered a psychopath because I feel as though people would expect me to snap one day. They don't have to be wary of me because I'm not clinically crazy like the stereotypical psychopaths. People are wrong. I know that they would think that I'll go on a killing spree. That's what most people think when they hear psychopath. Hell, that's what even I think. I'd rather not have that stereotype be plastered onto me. I would rather know that people understand how I supposedly think. I would rather them not have to worry about the day that they think I will snap. If people knew about the differences, I wouldn't have to have any of this feeling." As she spoke, it seemed that she was struggling to think of words to answer the posed question. It was rather obvious that she had suffered through the name-calling at some point in her life, and it had affected her in some way. A young woman named Only as Riley wrote a poem to describe her thoughts as a sociopath. She recorded herself reciting it and put the final product on YouTube.
Humans. You're all so ignorant. Stupid. Boring. Dull. Everyone is so uninteresting. Dull, dull, dull. I wish one of you, anyone, would do something of interest, something inspired, anything. You all just sit there. Boring, boring, boring. No interest in learning, no interest in intellect, so bent on your own opinions that new information does not penetrate the bubble of pure ignorance. It makes me want to scream, to punch things, to kick them, to slap someone. I wish I could communicate to you how dull this life is, but words do not describe. I'm still waiting for people to prove to me that the entire human race is not full of unoriginal, uninspired imbeciles. Please, someone prove that you aren't all stupid. I could really use the hope.
Someone who knows about the mixing of terms finds the issue to be annoying and out of control. This person was asked the same question that the anonymous sociopath was, and had this to say: "These people are blind and ignorant. It is annoying because there is an obvious difference between the two. My opinion is that people tend to be rather closed-minded when it comes to conditions. If something is negative, people tend to just want to throw it all together into one large pile. No one takes the time to really study these problems. Instead, they list it as boring and set it off to the side. Is it really boring, the subject, or are people just fearful of changing their opinions to admit that they are wrong?" BBC's show Sherlock was a big source of inspiration for this topic of research. The character Sherlock considers himself a sociopath, and he has many of the personality traits which define him as being one. Therefore, his self-diagnosis seems to be quite valid. But it's not just watching the show which inspired the research on this topic. In the show, the characters Sally Donovan and Anderson call Sherlock Holmes a psychopath and a freak. To some, Sally and Anderson symbolize the general public who just don't seem to care on the differences between the two different psychoses and blindly call people names. As studied by Dr. Rain, psychopaths and sociopaths tend to have abnormalities in parts of the brain that are involved in making moral decisions, such as the prefrontal cortex. This region helps process emotions such as rage and the impulse to act out. A Harvard mental health letter described all antisocial personality disorders, namely psychopaths and sociopaths, as callous, deceitful, reckless, guiltless, often intimidating, sometimes violent. They also continued to say that the terms sociopath and antisocial personality refer mainly to behavior and its consequences, while psychopath to inner experience. Because these people have these stereotypically evil disorders, people will group these psychoses together under one name. Either out of indifference or ignorance, their choice of words hurt those who do care or who have these disorders. People need to learn the differences before they decide to call people what they are not.